They say empires were born and fell, yet the mystery of this stone was never extinguished. While libraries burned and temples crumbled, the emerald tablet endured like an immortal echo, surviving time, kings, and religions. Some call it a myth, others an alchemical fable. But for those who dared to listen closely, every line of the tablet is like a hidden key, a password, a code engraved in silence. Hermes Trismegistus, a name that rumbles like thunder through the corridors of history. A man, or perhaps a myth? They say he was thrice great, master of Egyptian, Greek, and celestial wisdom. Others describe him as a timeless guardian, an avatar of consciousness who crossed ages to deliver a message impossible to erase. Imagine for a moment a green stone, not made only of minerals, but of memory. A plate that breathes. A physical body that contains the soul of what we call reality. If papyri turned to dust and steels were shattered, why did this text continue to cross millennia? Could its survival be more than chance? A clue? The Emerald Tablet is not just a document. It is a mirror. And every phrase, a reflection revealing both the mind of the ancients and the limits of modern science. Yet, something unsettling remains. How can a text so small, with so few lines, carry such overwhelming power? And how is it possible that, century after century, alchemists, philosophers, and even modern physicists keep returning to these words as if they were a compass? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a manuscript that doesn't teach how to live, but how to decipher the very fabric of existence. A riddle that does not ask for faith, but invites experience. Take a simple object near you now, a book, a stone, even a glass of water. Hold it in your hand. Notice how it seems solid, stable, silent. But if you could see beyond the human eye, you would discover it is never still. Every atom vibrates like a miniature constellation, hiding within itself the same principle that governs the sun. This is the promise of the tablet, that the ordinary is only a veil over the extraordinary, that the commonplace conceals the secret language of the infinite. And then arises the question that crosses centuries. If the Emerald Tablet truly holds a code of reality, why do modern scientists begin to see in its lines something replicable? Among all the lines engraved on the Emerald Tablet, one resounds like the heart of an oracle. What is above is like what is below. What is below is like what is above. For centuries, this phrase was interpreted as mystical poetry. But what if it is more than metaphor? What if it is a hidden map, revealing that the structure of the cosmos repeats itself on every scale, from atom to galaxy? Imagine the design of a distant nebula, captured by a telescope. Now imagine the delicacy of neurons in your brain, seen through a microscope. The resemblance is no coincidence. It is as if nature had written the same calligraphy, both in the skies and in your mind. This principle, what is above is like what is below, does not speak only of spiritual correspondence. It describes a pattern, a living fractal. Reality repeats itself on different scales, like an echo that never fades. The atom spins around a nucleus, just as the Earth orbits the Sun. The branches of lightning resemble the arteries in a human body. The rivers that run across the Earth draw the same map as the veins in our hands. It is not only poetry, it is a secret geometry. That is why alchemists saw this phrase as the master key. If we understand a reflection, we can understand the whole. If we decipher the mind, we may touch the stars. If we study the human body, we will comprehend the earth itself. Now look at the palm of your hand. See how the lines cross, like invisible rivers following their own course. If you could magnify them to the size of a continent, you would see the same trace that satellites capture when flying over the Amazon or the Nile. What is above is like what is below. This exercise is not an empty allegory, it is a direct experience. The universe folds itself within you. Every cell contains the memory of stars that died billions of years ago. Every breath echoes the winds that shape deserts. Today, scientists call this principle self-similarity. It is what we see in mathematical fractals, repeating infinitely. It is what appears in holography, where each fragment contains the complete image of the whole. But long before modern physics named these phenomena, the tablet had already said, reflection is the law. And what if the human mind is also a reflection of the cosmos? What if each thought were a star igniting in miniature? What if the human drama were only the projection of a greater theater, where galaxies and atoms perform the same dance? And then doubt rises like a shattered mirror. Could all this be nothing but ancestral poetry? Or has science already proven that this mirror between heaven and earth is real? On the emerald tablet, one line echoes like a cosmic chant. The sun is its father, the moon its mother, the wind carried it in its womb, and the earth is its nurse. In a few words, Hermes Trismegistus described a genealogy of creation, not of gods, but of forces, of living principles that sustain everything that exists. The sun as father, source of energy, of heat, of light. The moon as mother, guardian of tides, of inner rhythm, of the cycle of blood. The wind as messenger, carrying seeds, ideas, breaths. The earth as nurse, fertile breast that nourishes, shapes, and sustains. Is it poetry? Or is it a coded description of what we now call ecosystem, of cosmic balance? Think, without the sun, there would be no photosynthesis, and life would remain only an unfulfilled promise. Without the moon, the tides would not dance, and marine life might never have flourished. Without the wind, there would be no pollination, no breath, no exchange of life between beings. Without the earth, nothing would have roots. Hermes does not describe only a spiritual vision. He speaks of the interdependence of all the forces that gave us birth. But there is something deeper still, the fire that never dies. What Hermes calls fire, science calls energy. And physics confirms, energy is never destroyed, only transformed. The flame we light today on a candle is the child of sunlight captured by plants thousands of years ago. The energy moving your body now was once the brilliance of a star that exploded billions of years ago. All is borrowed flame. Nothing is extinguished, it only changes form. Close your eyes for a moment and place your hand over your chest. Feel the warmth that radiates from within. That warmth was not born here. It is the echo of a distant sun. You are literally made of starlight fire. The next time you look at the sun, remember, it is not only a star in the sky. It is your father. And the moon, silently regulating your biological rhythms, is your invisible mother. The alchemists saw in this verse the description of the cosmic marriage, the union of polarities that generates life. Sun and moon, fire and water, reason and intuition. In inner alchemy, this becomes the fusion of opposites within us, uniting what seems irreconcilable, strength and tenderness, action and receptivity, day and night. Modern science, on the other hand, reads this union in the very structure of the universe. Without contrast, there is no creation. Without polarities, there is no energy in motion. And so we arrive at an inevitable question. If Hermes called it fire, and physics calls it energy, what truly pulses behind all visible matter? Since medieval times, many have searched for the mythical philosopher's stone, an object said to turn lead into gold, to cure every illness, to grant long life. But what if that quest was never meant to be taken literally? What if the stone was not just an artifact, but a symbol of the very core of existence? When Hermes writes about the stone, perhaps he was not speaking of something hidden in vaults or caves. Perhaps he was speaking of something far more intimate, the invisible structure that composes all matter. Today, we know that every stone, every drop of water, every cell in our body is made of atoms. And within each atom lies a secret, a void that is not empty, a silent dance between particles that attract and repel. In alchemy, the philosopher's stone was the symbol of transmutation. In modern physics, we see the same promise, transforming matter, manipulating energy, revealing that the solid is not as solid as it seems. Nuclear fusion, quantum energy, the manipulation of invisible particles. Science, in its most advanced laboratories, now walks the very paths that alchemists once described in metaphors. Take now an ordinary stone, perhaps from a garden, a street, or even a small decorative pebble. Hold it in the palm of your hand. At first glance, it seems inert, silent, heavy. But if you could see beyond flesh and eyes, you would discover it is vibrating. Every atom within it pulses like a miniature star. The same energy that explodes in supernovas is hidden in that stone. And in your hand, without realizing it, you are holding a fragment of the living cosmos. When we hear of the philosopher's stone, we think of the impossible. But perhaps the impossible is only another name for the not yet understood. The stone speaks to the atom, and the atom speaks to the stars. And in some mysterious way, we too speak that language even without knowing it. What the ancients called transmutation, we now call energetic transformation. What they called gold may have been a symbol of awakened consciousness, or even the balance of life. True alchemy may not lie in turning metals, but in transforming oneself. In discovering that every cell of your body is made of the same stardust that composes the entire universe. But then the inevitable question arises. Is the philosopher's stone nothing more than a symbol? Or is it, in fact, a real key to unlock consciousness and understand the secret language of matter? On the Emerald Tablet, there is a verse that echoes like an absolute decree. The All is One. 3 words that cross centuries, religions, cultures. 3 words that seem simple, yet carry the weight of an entire universe. For the ancients, it meant that all souls are threads of the same web. For Hermetic philosophers, it was the reminder that true separation does not exist, only illusions of the mind. And for modern science, this phrase resounds in a unified field, in theories seeking to describe the cosmos as a single energetic symphony. The atom, the cell, the human body, the planet, the galaxy. All are different expressions of the same vibration. And if all is one, there is no outside and inside. There is no other and self. What happens within you happens in the whole. And what the whole vibrates reflects in you. Today, physicists speak of strings vibrating in multiple dimensions. Biologists speak of interdependent ecosystems, where the death of a single bee echoes into human survival. Neuroscientists discover that emotions spread like waves, from one brain to another, invisible yet powerful. What the ancients called unity, science now begins to describe with graphs and formulas. But the essence is the same. There is no separation. Try a small experiment now. Breathe deeply. As you inhale, notice the air entering. As you exhale, remember, this air leaving your lungs will be absorbed by a tree, which will transform it again into oxygen for you. You do not breathe alone. Every breath is an invisible pact between you and the world. A constant exchange confirming, the all is one. In symbolic language, this unity was the alchemical gold. Not a metal, but a state of consciousness. Gold that does not rust, does not divide, does not corrupt. A state of wholeness in the midst of chaos. For the soul, to remember that the all is one, is to remember that loneliness is an illusion. For science, it is to recognize that every living system exists only because all other systems are in balance. When a star dies, the entire universe shifts. When you choose to love, an invisible cycle shifts as well. But an inevitable question arises. If this unity can be understood by the mind, can it also be experienced here and now without equations or words? The Emerald Tablet speaks of a mysterious process. Separate the subtle from the dense, gently, with great skill. For many, this phrase was interpreted as a chemical instruction linked to distillation or laboratory work. But what if the tablet was not speaking only of metals, but of the soul itself? To separate the subtle from the dense. In practice, this is to separate essence from illusion. It is learning to discern what is the voice of spirit and what is the noise of the mind. It is to decant consciousness. Just as the alchemist heated substances to extract their purity, the soul is called to pass through the fire of silence. A fire that does not destroy, but reveals. Today, science shows that the simple act of breathing alters brain states. Inhaling deeply activates parts of the nervous system that bring calm, focus, and expansion. Exhaling slowly dissolves tensions accumulated in the body. What the ancients called purification by fire can be seen, in practice, as an exercise of conscious breathing. The fire burns away mental impurities, and silence reveals what is subtle. Try now. Inhale slowly through your nose, and imagine you are drawing a golden flame into yourself. Feel this flame travel through your body, illuminating every cell. Now, as you exhale, visualize the weight, the dense, the no longer needed, sinking and dissolving into the ground. As if every exhalation were a release, a surrender. Do this 3 times in silence. And notice, something within begins to separate. What is light rises. What is heavy dissolves. You have just experienced a principle Hermes described millennia ago. To separate the subtle from the dense. This ritual needs no temples, no stones, no furnaces. It needs only attention. A moment of presence, where sound becomes silence, and silence becomes fire. The alchemists believed that, by mastering this process, they could not only purify metals, but also purify mind and soul. And today, neuroscientists begin to discover that meditative practices alter not only mood, but the very structure of the brain. Once again, what seemed mystical reveals itself as replicable. But then the question arises. If this principle can be lived in silence, can it also be demonstrated in the laboratory? The verses of the Emerald Tablet do not sound only like mystical poetry. They echo principles that, centuries later, science would dare to confirm. Hermes said, "Nothing dies, everything is transformed." Today we call this the first law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. The eternal fire of the tablet is, in scientific language, the conservation of energy. Hermes spoke of correspondence between worlds, of heaven and earth mirroring one another. Today's science speaks of self-similarity, of fractals, of holograms. What is above repeats below, and each part contains the whole. Hermes mentioned separating the subtle from the dense. Today, physicists speak of the difference between visible matter and dark matter, between palpable energy and quantum energy. To separate the invisible from the tangible has become one of the greatest challenges of modern science. In quantum physics, non-locality, two particles can behave as if they were connected, even when separated by billions of kilometers. This echoes the idea that the all is one. An invisible web connects everything. In systems biology, every living being depends on countless others. A simple change in a colony of bees can affect the survival of humanity. Unity in action. In thermodynamics, heat never disappears, it only disperses. The eternal fire, once described in metaphor, is visible in the formulas that govern our days. The tablet does not need to compete with science. It precedes it as if it were a draft written in symbols. Close your eyes and imagine a web of invisible light connecting every atom of your body to every star in the sky. Now, think of someone you love. Even if that person is far away, you still feel their presence. That sense of invisible connection is the human reflection of something physics calls entanglement. You are not alone. You never were. The invisible is as real as the visible. The most fascinating part is that even today science encounters phenomena that seem to echo verses of the tablet, but remain undeciphered. Particles appearing out of nothing. Energy slipping into invisible dimensions. Fields that seem to connect matter in ways we still do not understand. It is as if the tablet were a bridge, on one side, myth, on the other, equation. In between, the mystery. And perhaps it is this mystery Hermes sought to preserve. Because knowledge is not merely given, it is awakened. But there is one line in the tablet that no laboratory has yet dared to decipher completely. A secret that speaks not only of the cosmos, but of the human heart itself. And it is this secret that leads us to the next step. Among the verses of the Emerald Tablet, there is one that resounds like a map of existence itself. He rises from earth to heaven, and again descends to earth. A simple movement, yet absolute. A cosmic rhythm pulsing in everything. On the spiritual plane, this verse is read as the journey of the soul. It is born in matter, ascends to spirit, and returns to embody once more, carrying the learning gathered in the heavens. It is the cycle of reincarnations, the flow of evolution. On the physical plane, science sees this same movement in countless processes. The water cycle, it evaporates, rises to the skies as clouds, descends again as rain, and fertilizes the earth. The cycle of particles, energy expanding in the form of a wave and gathering again in the form of matter. The human cycle, we inhale, expanding the chest, and exhale, returning once more to the world. What Hermes described is not only spirituality. It is the law of flow, the eternal dance of ascent and descent that governs all things. Every human being has already lived this cycle countless times, even without noticing. In life, we rise in moments of expansion, when we learn, conquer, dream. And we descend in moments of loss, when we suffer, fail, or are forced to withdraw. But the tablet suggests that both phases are part of transmutation. The ascent expands, the descent integrates. Heaven inspires, the earth receives. Without return, there is no wholeness. Just as gold is not born pure, but must be refined by fire, the soul too needs these comings and goings to transform into something greater. Now remember a fall you once lived. Perhaps a failure, a loss, a deep pain. Recall how, in that moment, rising again felt impossible. But today, looking back, you see that precisely there a different strength was born. A learning you would never have found had you not descended. This is the secret. The descent is not a mistake. It is part of transmutation. Just as vapor must condense to become rain and fertilize the earth, the soul must descend to blossom once again. The alchemists believed this verse held the key of solve et coagula. To dissolve and to recompose. To break and to remake. To rise and to descend. Today, physics calls this cycles of energy. Biology calls it homeostasis. Psychology calls it resilience. Different names for the same universal principle. At its core, Hermes seems to whisper, life is not a straight line. It is a spiral. And every turn, every fall, every return is, in truth, an ascent on another level. But what if this cycle were not only individual? What if the cosmos itself were bound to an eternal rising and falling, expansion and contraction, like a heart beating? And what if the human soul were but the reflection of this great cosmic cycle? On the Emerald Tablet, there is a moment when Hermes makes it clear. This knowledge was not meant for everyone. It was given only to the wise, to the initiates who had passed through the fire of discipline, the silence of patience, the weight of mystery. The secret was not handed over, it was awakened. For true knowledge cannot be imposed from the outside. It only blossoms when the soul is already prepared to receive it. Thus, throughout history, secret orders arose, discreet societies, hidden brotherhoods. Groups that swore to guard the mystery not out of selfishness, but because they knew that, in unprepared hands, this fire could burn instead of illuminate. How many ancient temples demanded silence? How many initiations forced the apprentice to remain in darkness before seeing the light? The oath was not only protection of the secret, it was also a rite of transformation. The ancients knew that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of listening. It is in silence that the mind becomes still and the invisible reveals itself. It is in silence that truth emerges, like a subtle flame that needs no words to be understood. Hermes left an enigmatic legacy. Do not reveal this teaching to one who is not prepared. Not out of fear of betrayal, but because each consciousness has its own time. The secret cannot be forced. It opens like a flower. Try now 1 minute of silence. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and allow yourself to simply hear what is around you. The distant sound of a car, the beating of your own heart, the whisper of breath. In that moment, you recreate the same oath the ancients once made. To listen to what is not spoken, to guard what can only be felt. In modern science, this oath translates differently. No longer in temples, but in patents, protected formulas, discoveries to which only a few have access. Knowledge, even today, remains veiled, guarded, and revealed in doses. Perhaps because there is still danger in unveiling everything at once. Perhaps because some truths can only be endured when consciousness is mature enough to carry them. Just as the alchemists once protected the stone, today humanity still protects the invisible. The difference is that now, instead of temples of stone, secrets are kept in laboratories, digital vaults, contracts of silence. But if the secret no longer belongs only to temples, if it is no longer locked in caves or manuscripts, to whom does it belong today? And who has the courage to reveal it? For centuries, men searched for the philosopher's stone outside themselves. In deserts, in laboratories, in hidden temples. But the secret of the Emerald Tablet may never have been out there. It was always here. Hermes did not ask us to believe in a magical object. He invited us to realize that awakened consciousness is the true stone, the only one capable of turning lead into gold. Not the lead of metals, but the lead of ignorance, of pain, of unconscious repetition. Every time we choose love over fear, we turn lead into gold. Every time the mind opens to silence and clarity, we transmute density into lightness. Every time we remember that the all is one, we fulfill the work of the alchemists. Science may replicate formulas, measure energies, calculate movements, but only the soul embodies the principle. For the stone is not an object. The stone is a state of being. The gold the ancients spoke of was not metal to fill coffers. It was inner purity. It was clarity of spirit. It was a consciousness that, once awakened, never falls back asleep. And so, the tablet does not ask for faith. It asks for remembrance. It does not beg for devotion. It invites awakening. For every breath, every choice, every instant is a small alchemical laboratory. And an entire life is the crucible where the great work is performed. Place your hand over your heart now. Feel the warmth pulsing. That warmth is the same eternal fire Hermes called the divine flame. It never goes out. It is always there, even in the darkest moments. You do not need to find the philosopher's stone. You are the stone, living, breathing, in constant transmutation. When we understand this, the weight of mystery turns into lightness, because we realize the secret was never distant. It was always in the blood that flows, in the silence that dwells, in the light that breathes through us. And perhaps the greatest legacy of the tablet is this: to remember that every human being already carries the formula. It does not need to be discovered, only recalled. Thus, science and spirituality cease to be rivals. They become two faces of the same stone. One measures, the other feels, and together they reveal the same truth. And perhaps, by touching life with consciousness, you are already transmuting lead into gold. Not the gold of kings, but the gold of the awakened soul. And when that gold shines, nothing can extinguish it. The secrets of the tablet are not kept in museums, but in the blood that runs through your veins and in the silence that dwells within your mind. You already carry the formula, the rest is remembering.